So now we have Dr. Pat Watson with us. He's a superintendent of schools, actually, and so I'm really, really excited about this interview. And as I said before, what we're going to go over with Dr. Watson is the long-term effects of COVID, and also we're going to at the end ask him about what schools in his state and maybe even nationally in his own district is doing about the school violence that we're seeing, the epidemic, really. So, Dr. Watson, let me start with the long-term effects of COVID that you're seeing. Can you tell us when COVID hit us all in early 2020 and totally, for most of us, out of the blue, what happened in your school district and how did you all respond?
So at that point, I was new to Bloomfield Hills. I had been on the job, counting weekends, 59 days. Started my first ever superintendency. And so when we closed, we listened to our governor, and the idea was we're going to close for a period of time to allow the hospitals to catch up and not be overrun. And it was the best thing to do. We didn't realize at that point in March of 2020 that we were going to be closing for the remainder of the school year. And so we kind of scrambled to pivot to make sure everyone had a device at home, that people had internet access, or we got them a hotspot or got them signed up for cable. And then just asking our teachers to really shift their instruction and do something that's never been done, right? So you spend all this time learning how to become a teacher and then teaching, and there really wasn't a lot of this is what it's like to teach full-time online. So there were a lot of unknowns. The message we really tried to get together or get across to our teaching staff was it's okay to fail, right? There's nobody that really is the expert on how to move a whole district from predominantly in-person to predominantly virtual. Right. So try different things. So that was kind of the mindset we had when we made that shift in March of 2020.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I don't know the demographics where you are, but I taught in a very rural school, and I don't know the percentage, but there's a good number of students that did not have internet access. But they thought of an innovative solution. They sent around school buses with hotspots to the various neighborhoods. And so they would say, students over here, the bus will be there from, 11 to 1, and the students could come on because we were one-to-one device. Everybody did have their own device, but what good is that if you don't have internet? And so, yeah, those innovative ideas that's what teaching is all about. We're always having to be very flexible. But I didn't know that you were brand new to being a superintendent. So how do you feel like you who did you lean on, I guess, is my question. Where did you get your, I heard you mention the governor who, in my opinion, has tried to do his best job as she could up there. But besides the state government, how else did you make your decisions? What advice were you getting?
So I have a nice group of mentors, right? So I reached out to them. Some are current and some are retired superintendents. And they were kind of in the same spot I was. Like, they've never experienced this. There's no preparation. There's no advice that they really, really could give. And, they did the best they could to be supportive. And I was a longtime history teacher. And so I loved the research. And so I started looking at some of the research and what was going on. And I found out there were countries that were ahead of us. So as a district, we built our own consortium of schools for best practices. It included schools from Denmark, South Korea, Japan, Canada, and Israel, and then with 20 different states in the United States.
Okay.
And so it was May and June of 2020 that we're meeting with a school in Denmark that's gone back, a school in Japan that's gone back, in preparation for going back in person in the fall of 2020. And we did start virtual in the fall of 2020, but based on the work with the consortium, we had 3 different models we ran at the same time when we came back in person. One was, at the high school level, one was K through 8, and then one was K through 12 for special education students.
Yeah.
So I found it really beneficial working with the other districts, in particular in another country, that were already going through what we were about to go through.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people know, but at your level in education, you guys don't get the summer off, and I'm sure that summer was one where you really did. You probably that you definitely didn't have a summer vacation preparing for that.
Did
In
not.
that yeah, I'm positive of that for sure. So let's go from talking about how you dealt with the lockdowns, which were, like you said, important to stop the spread. Those terms have kind of gotten lost. We were talking stop the spread, flatten the curve, but we really do forget how important that was. But let's talk about this school year that we're almost at the halfway point. What have you all, your staff, whether it's other folks in the board office or in the classrooms, the administrators in the schools, what have you all noticed students are missing from that a year and a half maybe of online learning?
For some, it's the academic piece, right? So we've looked at that. We've been very fortunate that a lot of our students have been able to maintain their academic standards. A huge piece is the mental health piece
Yeah.
and socialization. So if you read the CDC reports regarding the number of students that have been admitted to ER or urgent care with anxiety, depression, suicidal ideations, that's extremely high. The Surgeon General came out with a report last week, same type of mental health concerns for adolescents. So that's something that we're trying to work our way through. And, you kind of think of it as like your freshmen in high school. Their last quote unquote normal year of school was sixth grade.
Wow.
They're kind of behaving like a sixth grader,
Wow.
right? That third grader, their last year of normal school, whatever that means nowadays, was kindergarten. First grade, they got sent home early. Second grade was, hybrid, fully in person, virtual for 2 months. And now they're in third grade.
Yeah.
So those things and those socialization and those people contacts, they really haven't made those. So mental health is a huge concern. And we see a lot of students struggling for what it means to be back in school full day, every day, with still a lot of work and things like that.
Yeah.
Not to mention our staff.
Yeah.
I was kind of naive thinking this year might be a little bit easier. Maybe we won't be in mass. Maybe COVID will be a thing of the past. Naive yet again. Our COVID numbers in Michigan are the highest in the country.
Yep.
The staff is they're exhausted. They're just exhausted with everything right now.
Yeah, and I was reading some articles. It's hard to get everything in one episode, but I was reading some articles just about even how many staff are planning on resigning because it's just too much. And so that's a really good point. And then you didn't even you talked about the ninth graders being back in sixth grade, and then what about the children that were in kindergarten? They didn't even get that. I don't even want to go there. I don't even want to think about that. And so our listeners, you probably all are familiar with the term the summer slump. Kids lose things in the summer anyways. If they, leave on a Lexile score of, 900, when they start back school, they might have slid back to a 800 or so. So we always do it that summer slump when we're coming back, and that learning, I don't know if you call it a gap, but they lost. So let me ask you, how are your schools trying to play catch up? What are your catch up plans?
So we've done a couple things. One, we made sure not just this summer. Well, let me back up. 2 summers ago, summer of 2020, we offered virtual instruction. We gave out workbooks for students to do during the summer. This past summer, we had virtual options and in-person options as far as the summer academy. We also hired additional teachers K through 12 to lower the class sizes. We've looked really closely at our multi-tier systems of support to make sure we're providing the tier 1 and tier 2 interventions that are really, really needed. I think those are key things that we've looked at. We've added additional social work support in all of our buildings, so more students have access to a social worker. And so we'll continue to evaluate those things now at the halfway mark coming up in January to see if we're kind of doing what we need or if there are more needs that our students have. And I think it's important for everyone to understand that this is going to be a whole generation of students that need additional support.
Right.
It's not going to be, well, one year we did this for mental health and we had an assembly and we brought in therapy dogs, and now in fourth
Yeah.
grade they're great, right? So,
Right.
another example is we've added therapy dogs to two of our buildings, and by February, all of our elementary and middle schools will have a therapy dog in the building, working with the students that is dedicated for the students. So we're looking at those long-term supports, knowing that it's a lot for this generation, what they're dealing with, the amount of data that they have to process, daily compared to what people did in the 70s and 80s,
Right.
and just also the impact social media is having
Yeah.
on their mental health.
So what I'm hearing too from you is whether you're a parent or an educator, pack your patience. I mean, we, like you said, we cannot think tomorrow or, once we've hopefully gotten this pandemic down to, levels that we're accustomed to with the seasonal flu, we're still going to have to play catch up, and there's always going to be that gap. I don't know if this is good to say, but I think fortunately we at least it's not just American students that are going to be this year and a half behind. It's the whole world. So at least that we have that, and we'll be learning together. And I like the point you made earlier about learning from those different countries. That's really awesome to hear. And so everybody knows as they listen to this podcast that this is one school district, and hopefully, I'm sure all school districts, or at least the vast majority of them, are taking steps too. So I'm really glad to hear this. I kind of cheated and got out of the field right when it was getting even more difficult. That's not something I'm happy about, but I was called to go a different way. My hat's off to y'all. Thank you very much. So I'm going to do a really bad turn here to a different topic, but I guess the segue can be just the difficulties that this generation of students are facing. And I'm in the middle between this technology ingrained generation and not. Like, for example, I remember when I was in elementary school, I think we still had dial-up internet, and the most advanced game we played was the Oregon Trail. So I'm not totally in either generation, but they are faced with a lot of things that we weren't faced with, because we definitely didn't have social media when I was in middle school. It was starting to creep up when I was in high school. And so this generation, one of the things that they're facing, we know that we're facing, is this school violence, as I call it, an epidemic. I think you guys are, an hour away from the Oxford High School tragedy?
We're probably about 30, 35 minutes, maybe
Oh,
40.
wow.
We're extremely close. They're also, like in our league for athletics and activities, we're in the
Wow.
same league.
Wow. So can you
We have
tell
staff
us,
members that had children in the building when things occurred.
my word, that, so, and I'm just going to get on a soapbox for just a second, and then I'm going to finally ask you a question about this. Or maybe this will be my question. Were you surprised at the national reaction? I was floored that, I kind of watch the trending topics on Twitter, and I'll have my news sites that I didn't see it for more than a day or two. I mean, you go back to a couple of tragedies ago, sad to say. By the way, everyone, as we record this is the 9th anniversary of Sandy Hook. Do you feel like that the national media paid the attention that this tragedy was due?
Like, I'm not sure I could even answer that. I'm not sure how much time is the right amount or the wrong amount. What I can say is that we continue to see gun violence throughout the country. It's not just schools. We're less than a week out from the shooting that happened down in Texas that occurred at a vigil where 13 people were injured, and I believe one person was killed
Yeah.
at a candlelight vigil, right? I have friends
Right.
that live in Chicago, and, they live on the South Side, and they're concerned about their safety and the amount of gun violence. So we have a country that's inundated with gun violence. What
Sure.
the answer is, I don't know. Maybe somebody
Yeah.
has that answer. As schools, we're cognizant of safety, but just not safety around active shooting, but safety at the bus stop, safety,
Yeah.
going out at recess and making sure the playground. Like there's a lot more concerns as we send our children to school now than we did 20, 30, 40 years ago when we sent our children off to school. And I know for us, we're in the process of hiring someone that's going to be in charge of safety and security protocols in our district, all the way from the bus stop up to active shooter training,
Excellent.
just so it's top of mind.
Yeah.
Because so often, I've been in education almost 30 years now, it seems like a tragedy happens, everyone reacts, everyone updates their procedures. A couple of years go by, and maybe you're not staying on top, maybe you are, but we definitely want it to be top of mind so that regardless of a tornado like we just saw that hit in Kentucky, and you
Yeah.
hear about people in a candle factory that died, people in Illinois in an Amazon warehouse that died, it makes sense. What was the training? Did
Right.
they know where the shelter was? Policies and procedures and protocols, and who's making sure those are known and updated and trained? Again, that's why we're going to be hiring someone in this next year, early on, that can fulfill that from a school perspective, where every day they wake up thinking about how can I make the school safer for everyone that enters them.
That is really comforting to hear. And it reminds me of the superintendent in this district that I was in. He actually, don't ask me how you make the jump from being a sheriff to a school superintendent, but that's what he did. So he was very cognitive of safety. And so it was after, I forget which tragedy, there's been so many, as you already stated, but after we were reviewing our procedures and the whole school district was ready to use the fire alarm as our active shooter alarm because they were like, well, the shooter won't know that we're on to him. And he was like, no, that doesn't work because X number of the last shootings, the shooter actually pulled the alarm to get people to run out into the hall. And it's just, I don't want to get too dark here, but but I'm glad that you guys are putting someone in place that are looking at that because you just mentioned something I didn't even think about, safety at the bus stop. And so it's sad that we have to evolve like we do, but we're doing what we have to do. And I'll say it again. Not enough attention was put on Oxford. I can't believe how desensitized that we've gotten. But let's end on it. I'm not going to keep you too long. Thank you for that very, very much. And everybody, all the teachers listening, let's just remember that we're under a lot of pressure, but our students are too, with the things that Dr. Watson and I already talked about, and even more, the shootings and the violence. So I want to throw a curveball at you. You didn't know I was going to, I did my research and read your profile on your website. So you have a couple kids in college. Here's my curveball. What's a tradition that you all do? The winter breaks are coming up. What is the tradition that you're looking forward to doing? Are your kids coming back home? What's winter break going to look like at the Watson house?
Wow. We're breaking some of the traditions. Traditionally, we always chop down a Christmas tree together every year. But, I've become an empty nester this year, so it's a little bit different. My youngest is back home. She's a freshman at Ohio State University, so she's home for the holidays. My middle
Awesome.
child, she now lives in Wisconsin-Madison, where she went to school.
Okay.
She forgot to put in to get time off of work, so she won't be coming home until after the New Year's because as a first-time person in the job market, she didn't
That's
realize
right.
people request those days off over the holidays right
Pretty
away,
early.
and you're not
Yeah.
guaranteed
Yeah.
weeks off. And then my
Absolutely.
youngest son, he'll be traveling to Africa. He'll be going to Senegal and spending 2 weeks there. His girlfriend is from Senegal, so
Oh,
he's
wow.
going to meet her family. And he's a now high school history teacher in my former district where I previously worked. And so it's going to be a little different for us.
Yeah.
Some new traditions we'll look to start now that we're empty nesters. But good question. You did catch me a little off guard. Appreciate that.
Well, that one in Wisconsin, if she had gone into education, she wouldn't have had that problem. You don't have to put in any time off if you're an educator. So let her know that. One last thing before we go, because we're still under the 20-minute mark. Give us, please, the funniest. So one of the things that we tweeted about last week was how has being a educator affected your parenting style? So I'll give you an example. My sixth grader can't get away with anything. I literally have his password to his Google Classroom so I can see when all his assignments are due, and I know that I only do that because I was an educator. And so I know all the tricks of the trade. Can you tell us real quick, how has you being an educator, how did it affect your parenting? That's my last curveball, and I won't do another one.
So I would say just formative assessments of my kids. You have that conversation. Where are you at? Are we here? Are we here? Do you
Right,
understand? Like
right,
5 to 5. 5 means I completely understand. I got you, Dad. Here means you need me to let you know a couple. So just some of those things. And then I
right.
would say the other part is education. In
Yeah.
that, we expressed early on to our children that, it is basically your job. School,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a task at hand.
Mm-hmm.
And, our kids grew up in a household where reading was valued, where we celebrated education.
Yeah.
And, that their goal as they became older was to earn scholarships for academics so they could
Wow.
go to the school they wanted
That's
and,
right.
and graduate debt free. So a little brag, I'm really proud of all three of my kids. They all earned
Awesome.
academic scholarships. My youngest, like I said, is a freshman, but when she's done, I'll have three that were able to go through college and not have any debt when they graduate, which is something, my wife and I are very proud of them for the work they put
Yeah.
in academically to that point.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you shared that. And I'll be sharing that with my sixth grader, because, I'm not all about all A's if you don't have that capability, but he is capable. And so we do the same thing in my household. I wholeheartedly agree. Dr. Watson, I'm going to cut it off right here. You've been more than generous with your time, and I appreciate this so very much. Thank you for coming on and continuing this conversation, because really education is continual. And so we're always learning. And we appreciate your leadership up there in Michigan. And again, thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks.